to day 2 of the Diet Rebellion. Gosh, I am so glad that you're here, and I hope that you are super excited today because this training is going to be a big one. I'm going to help you hopefully walk away with more clarity on what will work to reach your goals. Now, before we dive in, let me quickly catch up anybody who maybe missed training 1 because today's really going to start to build on what we started in training 1. So in training 1, we talked about how in order to reach your goal of weight loss or a better relationship with food or improved health markers, you need both the right tool and the right mindset. Without both, you're going to stay stuck, frustrated, confused, not knowing what to do next. Oh, there we go. So by the end of training 1, hopefully, if I did my job right, it was very clear that when we talk about what tool we should utilize, diets ain't the answer. And this is not a you problem, it's not a willpower problem, it's not a motivation problem, it's literally a psychology problem. Diets do not work with the human brain. They keep you trapped in an impossible choice, either comply with the rules, which it builds up all this pressure, it feels restrictive, or rebel against them. And this feels a little bit like pseudo-freedom, but it really is just pseudo-freedom because you're still being controlled by the diet. You're just simply doing the opposite of what the diet says. Either way, you're not the decision maker in your own life. You're stuck on this pendulum, swinging back and forth between restriction and rebellion. And y'all know that pendulum is no fun to be stuck on. And so we had this realization that we need a tool that works with our human brain. We also talked about some of the broken mindset that is preventing you from getting the results that you want. And this is the mindset of, I'll try. And I know why you do it. It keeps you safe. It keeps you protected from feeling disappointment, from feeling like a failure if things don't work out the way that you want them to work out. But it also keeps you stuck. So it keeps you safe and stuck, never actually making any progress towards the goals because you don't actually stay committed to anything when it gets challenging or when it gets hard. And so many of you are so afraid of failure that you don't try, or you don't commit, and then, ironically, you just fail by default. And that's why I challenge you to either step in or step out, to commit or to be honest that you're just not ready to change yet. And my guess is, those of you guys who are here live or listening to the replay, you decided to hop off the fence and commit. You decided that you're going to step in and do things differently than the way that you've done it in the past. And that decision will make all the difference in the results that you're able to create in your life. Now, as a quick reminder, we do have our emoji, my very favorite emoji, the breakthrough emoji, the mind-blown emoji. So a reminder that as you listen today, if you learn something that you didn't know that you didn't know, you learn something that really shifts perspective for you, that changes things for you, that causes this light bulb aha moment, drop that emoji in the chat and let me know. Now, we talked about how we need the right tool and the right mindset, and that is what today's training is going to be on. When we have both, it changes everything. Now, we learned last time around that we need a tool that provides some structure. Our human brain likes predictability. It likes to be able to anticipate what's next. So our brain really does well with some structure. We don't actually do well with just like, do whatever you want. A lot of us have tried that when it comes to our eating. Just eat whatever you want. Like I said, I've gained 15 pounds just eating whatever I want. So we do want some structure. And our brain needs some flexibility. And our life needs some flexibility. We don't live static lives. So we need structure with flexibility. And then to be able to work with our brain, we need to do this without threatening our freedom and autonomy. So that our brain knows what's coming, can anticipate what's coming, but has that freedom to be able to make choices. So the tool that we're going to talk about today is macro counting. Now, this is very, very important because macro counting can meet all of these criteria. It can provide structure with flexibility without threatening freedom and autonomy, or it can fail miserably at all three. It all comes down to how you utilize the tool. So let's start with talking about this tool. Macro counting. Macros. What are macros? It's not like macaroni and cheese, Amber. No, macros are the three main nutrients that your body uses for energy. They are carbohydrates, fats, and protein. These are the nutrients that give your body calories. And everything that you eat breaks down into some combination of these three. So when we talk about macro counting, we're basically talking about paying attention to how much you eat of each of the macronutrients. Now, when people get into macro counting, one of the first things that they tend to do is they tend to set their macros. And so you'll have something like, okay, I need to eat 150 grams of carbs and 50 grams of fat and 130 grams of protein. And then people get really laser focused in on hitting these numbers. And I mean, it makes sense, right? These are your targets. These are the goals. These are what you have to hit. And they become really laser focused on like, now I have to hit them. And you can already start to see how that just breeds that restrictive diet mindset that you're used to. So the thing that I think is so important and maybe an aha moment for a lot of you is that macro counting is not about hitting your numbers. That is not the purpose, ironically enough. The purpose of macro counting is threefold. It's awareness, data, and feedback. That is what the tool is very good at when used the right way. So let me explain a little bit more. One thing that macro counting is really valuable for is awareness. Now, most people, one, have little clue what they're actually eating, and two, have very little clue on how to balance fueling their body well and enjoy food, right? Like YOLO. Right? We all want to like enjoy our life, enjoy food. So how do we find that balance between, yes, fueling our body, giving it what it needs, and being able to enjoy food? Most people don't know how to do that. And then a lot of times I see people who think that they're eating really healthy, but maybe they're getting 30 grams of protein when you actually need 120. Or maybe they're crushing 90 plus grams of fat without realizing, because healthy fats can add up really, really fast. And what a lot of people are doing when it comes to their body is flying blind. You're just guessing. And we all know that guessing is not going to actually take you very far in your journey. So what macro counting does is it provides you structure with flexibility. I liken it kind of to like when you go bowling and you put up those little bumpers on the side, right? Like the bumpers don't make sure that you're gonna always roll a strike every single time, but they do give you like a little bit of wiggle room to be able to work within so that you're not crashing and burning every single time. That's what happens when I go bowling. I like crash and burn in the gutter every time. So then you put up the bumpers and now at least we're like in the right vicinity. So you have some structure when you have these targets, but you have flexibility in how you hit them. One of the big hallmarks of macro counting that you'll hear most people preach when they talk about why macro counting can be such a great tool is that all foods can fit. You're not gonna have a list of do's and don'ts. You're not gonna have a list of good foods and bad foods or a list of eat these foods, don't eat these foods. All foods can fit. And so macro counting starts to give you some structure for what that moderation can feel like. Balancing, hitting your goals, fueling your body with also enjoying food. And then a big one is that because we don't have a list of do's and don'ts and goods and bads and unhealthy and healthy food, there is no morality around food. You start to realize that food is amoral. You're not bad if you eat a cookie. You're not good if you eat broccoli. There's no morality. Food is just food, and it's composed of different nutrients, and our body needs these nutrients in different amounts. So then why, Amber, why do you talk about counting macros instead of just counting calories? Fantastic question if this is what you've been thinking. It's important to understand that calories tell you how much to eat, but do not tell you what kind of food to eat. These three macronutrients behave very differently in your body. They do different things. I often will use the metaphor of, in your car, you have different fluids. You have your radiator fluid, you have your gas, you have your windshield wiper fluid. And yes, they're all liquids, but they do different things, don't they? So if you had plenty of windshield washer fluid, but no gas, your car is not going to perform optimally. And it's the same thing when it comes to macros. Protein is very important for the structure of our body. for replacing and repairing and building tissue, all of our body, not just muscle mass, but all of the tissue all over your body. Carbs are incredibly important for energy. Our body thrives and runs on glucose. And then fats are really important for your hormone production. They help with that facilitation of hormone production, and then we also have essential fat that's really important for protecting our organs inside of us. So when you know the breakdown and you understand, okay, I need a certain amount of carbs and a certain amount of fat and a certain amount of protein for my body to run optimally, now you can start making really informed adjustments instead of just eating less, which is what happens when a lot of people count calories. It's like taking a machete to your body instead of a scalpel. Scalpel is going to be more targeted, more specific, and more accurate versus just plowing over and just cutting calories willy-nilly. So one of the things that I mentioned before, and this was an aha moment for a lot of you, that macro counting is not necessarily about hitting your numbers. It's about three things. Do you remember what I said? It's about awareness of what you're eating. It's about data, and it's about feedback. Data is the key, and feedback is the key to understanding your body. So many of you guys are making changes with your workouts, with your nutrition, and you don't really understand how those changes are impacting your body because you're looking at the wrong feedback to accurately assess whether it's working or whether it's not. What is the, if you're thinking about, probably most people, probably not you, but most people, when they think about, is what I'm doing working or not, what is the singular piece of feedback that they are looking at to determine if it's working or not? Of course, not you. This is everybody else I'm talking about. Yeah, Claire got it. Cheryl got it. Sandy got it. The scale, right? We step on the scale, and then maybe, I mean, you tell me again, this is other people, of course. You step on the scale, it's up 2 pounds. So what does that mean? What's the interpretation that we bring to that experience? Yeah. It's not working. I gained fat. I'm a failure. I'm doing it wrong. So good, Christina. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like one piece of data, one feedback, and now we make all these conclusions about how I'm doing it wrong, it's not working, yada, yada, yada. Versus we step on the scale and the scale's down, and now what do we feel? Elated. Oh my gosh, it's working. Oh my gosh, I'm doing so good. Keep going, right? We celebrate that. Yeah, success. That's right, Lisa. Now, if that was the only experience that you had, whatever. But here's what really irks my tater, and here's where we really start to go down the rabbit hole, is that experience then translates into the rest of our day, yes or no? How many of you guys have had the experience of starting eating healthier or whatever, and you do it for a while, and then the scale is not moving, it's not going down, or it's even going up. And so now you feel like I'm doing it wrong, I don't know if what I'm doing is really working, I don't know if this is gonna help, and so then how do you eat the rest of the day? Who cares? Who cares? The scale's just going up, it's not actually working, so F it, right? And so that pattern creeps in a lot for a lot of us. But here's the thing that you have to understand. The scale cannot directly measure fat loss. The scale does not know the difference between fat, muscle, water, or even if you went to the bathroom this morning. The scale simply measures your relationship to Earth's gravity. And so a lot of us are asking the scale to do something that it isn't fit to do. And I often, when I talk about this concept, like to share some photos because I think, a photo says things in way less words than I could say them. So this is a photo of me at the same weight. I weigh 142 pounds in both, and you can see on the left, my body composition is much higher in fat, lower in muscle, and on the right is much higher in muscle and lower in fat. So I weigh the same amount, right? The scale cannot determine how much fat I have on my body. All it can tell me is my relationship to gravity. Now, lest you think that I am unusual in this, let me introduce you to my client, Chelsea. How many pounds do you think is different between Chelsea, between these two photos? If I looked at this, I would say it's at least, 15 pounds. But in reality, she only, and I use that in quotation marks, she only lost 2 pounds. There is a 2-pound scale difference between these two photos. What happened? She lost fat and she gained muscle. Between these two photos, she's lost 13.5 inches, but quote, only 2 pounds. And then last one is my other client, Tracy, and Tracy weighs the exact same amount in both of these photos. But you can see that she is leaner on the right than she is on the left. Same weight. So what I hope that if you're picking up what I'm putting down, the scale cannot directly measure fat loss. It can't do it. And it's one of the reasons why you feel so confused about your progress, because you're looking at incomplete data. Now, I'm not telling you to throw away the scale. I'm not saying it can't provide any data. What I'm saying is that it is incomplete data. So then the question is, what should you be looking at instead? Okay, a lot of you guys are coming here saying, Amber, I don't know what to do for my body. Some of you are perimenopausal and you're like, Amber, what used to work isn't working anymore. Or you have 5 children, or you're 70 years old, or you have hypothyroidism, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, or whatever unique circumstance that you find yourself in. We can kind of think about you like a little like a machine in a black box, right? And you have your own little cute, unique machine. We all have our own cute little unique machines. Okay, and it's a little bit of a black box, right? We're kind of scratching our head being like, I don't know what's gonna work for my body. So how do we figure this out? Well, if you imagine that your machine has at the top an input and an output, and so everything in the middle is black box. We can't see it, we can't touch it, we don't really know what's going on in that machine, but what we can pay attention to and what we can be very sure of is what we put into the box and then what pops out of the box. Right? So we can be very aware of what we put into the box and then what comes out of the box. And so what's really awesome about macro counting is that it gives you really good data about what's going in. What are you putting into your box? And then if we're tracking the right data, not just the scale, right? Because we know that that's incomplete data, but you're tracking the right data, then we can say, what are we putting into my body? What's popping out? And now with both of those pieces in place, we can start to figure out that black box. And so macro counting becomes this beautiful way to be able to figure out your body. Not your sister's body, not your friend's body, not your mom's body, but your body with whatever you got going on in your body. When we pay attention to the input and we pay attention to the output, now we have so much more data and information to be able to make really good decisions about what? Your body. Now, when I start talking about macro counting, people often come with preconceived notions about what that means. About, well, you have to track and you have to do it this way and you have to weigh all your food and it's super time consuming and blah, 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 blah. Stop. Stop. There is no one right way to count macros. And I always tell my macros one-on-one clients, when it comes to tracking your food, tracking your data points, listen up. Some data is better than no data. And some of you are so freaking laser focused on being perfect that you end up quitting and getting zero data. If we're trying to understand your body, some data is better than no data. And so I love to use this image because it really puts into play an experience of what it feels like with a lot of people. And if you're listening to the audio of this, on the right there's a ladder with the rungs that are spaced very far apart, and there's a person on the floor who cannot even reach the first rung. And then on the left, the rungs are spaced much closer together and the person is all the way to the top. And I see this a lot when I see how people approach macro counting. Like there's one right way to do it. You have to set your numbers, you have to hit them, you have to weigh everything, you have to track everything that you ever eat. It takes forever, you have to learn to create recipes, blah, 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 blah. And they're standing there and they can't even reach the first rung. And so then what do? They go, well, this is not worth it. Macros don't work. And then they quit. Versus bringing those rungs closer together, realizing that macro counting isn't a monolith. It's simply about awareness, data, and feedback. How can you have more awareness, more data, and more feedback about your body? How can you make those rungs closer? It doesn't have to look any certain way. That way we're able to climb those rungs and get where we want to go. You don't want to track everything? Okay, great. What are you willing to track? You don't want to weigh everything? Great. What are you willing to measure? The point is that you can make this work for you. You don't need to fit your life into macro counting. You want to fit macro counting into your life. Okay? Now, the reason people go really hard is because there are two truths that are simultaneously exist, and there's some tension between these two truths. Now, as I go through this next section, I want you to listen really carefully because I'm going to be talking about two different personalities, and the solution is very different depending on which personality you tend towards. Okay? So the first truth that is really important to understand is that you cannot expect results you don't work for, right? Nothing changes if nothing changes. We know that. You have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone in order to create change. So that is true, and that moves us into motion. It moves us into, okay, I gotta do something different, I gotta change. But truth number two is just as, if not even more important. Truth number two is if you commit to more than you're willing to do or able to do consistently, you're going to quit. And you innately know that if you quit, you get zero results. So what we need is enough challenge, enough change to produce a result, but not so much that you burn out. So the question becomes, how do you navigate this tension? And this is where we're going to bring in personality types, because I've noticed that there are two different types of people, two different types of clients that I tend to work with, and they make opposite mistakes when trying to navigate this tension. So first type, and here's what I want you to do as you're listening to this. I want you to be honest, and I want you to do a little self-identification. Which of these do you tend towards more when it comes to food? Now, you may tend towards different sides of the spectrum when it comes to other areas of your life, but we're specifically talking about food, health, and nutrition. The first type, and when you hear yourself in this, please let me know, because I'm super curious about who identifies where. So the first one is my perfectionist. Where are my perfectionists at? Oh, love my perfectionists. These are people who tend to commit to more that they can maintain. Hey, Melanie, Deidre, Hope, yes. So they tend to commit to more than they can sustain. And the mantra of the perfectionist is, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it at all. Now, you might have a tendency towards perfectionism if you're someone who's like, if I can't hit my macros perfectly, I stop tracking. I see this with people who they research for weeks and weeks and weeks because it makes them feel like they're doing something, but they don't start until they can do it perfectly, or they can do it right, or at the exact right time. Or they get anxious. My perfectionists tend to get anxious when they can't control exactly what's in their food. They feel like they can't start something until everything is in perfect place. Ouch, Barbie said. Yeah, Mel said, yeah, the research for sure. Yeah, it makes you feel like you're doing something if you just keep learning, consuming. But nothing changes until nothing changes. So we are able to trick our brain to think we're doing something, but we don't have to actually do the uncomfortable thing of taking action. So those are my perfectionists. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, if you're like, that's not me, Amber, you may be what I call a chronic grace giver. So the chronic grace giver is someone who doesn't really push themselves hard enough to change. Their mantra is I deserve compassion and understanding for everything, always, okay? You might be a chronic grace giver if you're like, oh, it's been such a hard week. I need to be gentle with myself. Oh, life is too short. I should just enjoy food. I'm not like those rigid diet people. I have balance. I'll start when life calms down. You have a very I'll make up before tomorrow. So you're just really good at letting yourself off the hook. And listen, there's no problem with letting yourself off the hook, except that you then simultaneously complain about not getting results. Because you're letting yourself off the hook every single time and you don't hold yourself to the fire. Mary says, I think I go back and forth. Yeah, that's really insightful. A lot of us do. Because the perfectionist knows on some level that they need to cool their jets a little bit. So then they tend to swing over into the chronic grace giver. Okay? Right? And then we realize, well, nothing changes if nothing changes, and so they swing over to the perfectionist. So the goal is not to be in either of these camps. What's the goal? The goal is to be in the middle. The goal is to find that middle spot, that balance between pushing yourself enough that you get results without so much that you end up quitting because you can't be perfect. That's the goal. Now, how do we do this? So I'm going to do a little coaching here, a little uncomfortable coaching perhaps, but coming from a really good place, because once you see this, you can't unsee it. And it changes everything moving forward. So where are my perfectionists at? Or where are my people who, like, maybe you're sitting in perfectionism right now, maybe you're at that phase right now. What I need you to understand about perfectionism, the way we trick ourselves is we say, well, my perfectionism is just high standards. I just have high standards. The uncomfortable truth about this is it's not actually high standards. It's the fear of not being good enough, and then we cloak it in excellence. So for a lot of perfectionists, there's this connection between your worth being tied to your performance. It's a very clear link. Which means we make this extrapolation that if you're not perfect with your macros, with your eating, with your workouts, that means that you aren't good enough as a person, right? It's why perfectionists can't just like mess up a little bit, because to them, any imperfection is just proof of inadequacy. The cookie isn't just a cookie, it's evidence you failed, that you're weak, that you can't be trusted. It's why we tend to go all or nothing. If you can't be perfect and prove your worth, then you might as well give up entirely. Yeah, Sandy said it's an obsession about wanting to be in control. Such good realization. So, how do we get out of this? Perfectionists need to practice good enough. What's good enough? If a lot of times with my perfectionists, I will challenge them to intentionally go over their macros and track it. Ooh, does that feel hard? Good, it should feel hard. That means there's growth there, right? You like eating the cookie and then continuing to track is something I might challenge a perfectionist to do. Challenging you to go to the gym for 15 minutes when you can't go for an hour, right? Instead of skipping it entirely. Aiming for 80%, not checking some of your boxes some days, to pull back on that a little bit. Because the truth is, perfection is an illusion. It literally does not exist. You are running a race that has no finish line, and then wondering why you're giving up and quitting. Okay? So if that feels hard to you, if it's like, oh gosh, that feels so hard to like intentionally go over my macros or track something when I know I'm not gonna hit my numbers, that means that that's something that you need to work on. Yeah. Amy said, it's me. I'm not a good person if I don't make the right choice. Yes. And the key word there that I would help you to work on if I was coaching you is right. How are you defining the right choice? Because the definition that you bring to the table makes all the difference. Yeah, Laura said, stopping the self-talk of you're not good enough is so hard. So hard, Laura, and so transformative. Because imagine what is on the other side of being able to believe that what you do is not who you are. Imagine what you can do when you get there. Okay, I talked to my perfectionists. My chronic grace givers, pull up a seat. Let's have a conversation. Oftentimes, when I coach chronic grace givers, there's this belief that I'm just self-compassionate. That is kind, Amber. That is very kind. It is not kindness. This is not where it stems from. It creates self-abandonment. It's not self-compassion, it's self-abandonment. So what's behind the chronic grace giver? The fear that you're usually struggling with is fear of failure combined with fear of disappointment. So the way that you protect yourself is by never fully committing, by never fully stepping in, by giving yourself an out every single time. Because if you don't try, you can't fail. And if you don't set expectations, then you aren't going to set yourself up and be disappointed in the future. It's why you tend to hedge with the I'll try. It's why you tend to give yourself constant outs. You're avoiding the pain of giving your all and not succeeding. And then what does that mean about you? So that self-abandonment piece is that by constantly letting yourself off the hook, by constantly staying in your comfort zone, you abandon your commitments to yourself, you abandon your growth, you abandon your potential, you start to lose your own self-respect because you don't follow through. You abandon your goals in favor of staying comfortable. And yeah, you think you're being kind to yourself, but you're actually betraying your future self in order to keep your present comfort. So what do we need to do? What do we need to practice? My chronic grace givers need to practice uncomfortable commitment. You need to practice holding your feet to the fire, honoring your commitments, especially when you don't feel like it. You need to set non-negotiables and actually stick to them. You need to learn to be a little uncomfortable in the moment in order to make yourself proud tomorrow. My chronic grace givers, they aren't willing to put themselves in discomfort right now. Whereas my perfectionists are very willing to put themselves into discomfort, like almost too much discomfort right now. So because they're so future focused, where my chronic grace givers are much more like, ooh, that's painful now. They don't really think about who they want to be in the future. So you can see how we're kind of ping-ponging between these two extremes. So where do we want to be? I call it the sustainable challenge zone. So we won't want to be far to the right. This is where you're intense for a while and then you burn out. We don't want to be to the left because if nothing changes, nothing changes. Our goal is in between those two extremes, where you're pushing yourself enough to get results, but not so much that you quit. And what's really important about this is that it's different for every single person. Right? This is also why diets don't work, because they will outline exactly where you should be, which may be too far or not enough for you, depending on your body, right? So this is the goal, is how can I find my sustainable challenge zone? You want to find that sweet spot. That's something that I help my clients to be able to find, is what is that sweet spot? Enough, pushing myself enough to get results, but not so much that I quit. Not so easy that nothing changes, not so hard that you tend to burn out. This is the tension. This is what a lot of people get wrong. They either aim too low and get frustrated with no results, or they aim too high and they quit when it gets hard. So when you find that balance, you get both. You get success and it doesn't feel restrictive. Now, I'm going to transition into talking a little bit about some of my clients who have been able to find that balance for themselves. Now, I'm going to be showing you some progress photos. So if that is triggering to you, I just want to give you a heads up that maybe you want to come back in about 5 minutes. Now, my goal with showing you these is to help you believe that results are possible for you. Because I work with a lot of women who can see that other people are successful, but they struggle to believe that that could be them. And we're going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk about how we work with your brain alongside of that after I show you these. But my goal with this is, like, the more success I can show you, the more results I can show you, the more I can help to coax your brain into believing that maybe, just maybe, you can be successful as well. So this is Martine. On last Thursday, when I posted some of the progress photos that I showed in that slide deck, some of you guys, I went back and read the comments on the chat, and some of you guys were asked a fantastic question, which was, did these people maintain those results? Oof, such a good question. So glad that you're asking that question, because there's a difference between losing weight and keeping it off. And the key for most of the people who lose the weight and keep it off is that it is not just physical, it is a mental transformation as well. Those people who tend to lose weight and bounce back, it's often because you had a physical transformation without enough of the mental. So I bring this up because Martine joined Macros 101 in 2020, so like almost 6 years ago. And she was a classic self-sabotager. She didn't follow through. She would make promises to herself and then not keep them. And so that was a big breakthrough for her, was how does she follow through on keeping promises to herself? So I keep up with Martine on social media. It's 5 years later, she's 66 now, and she's maintained her success because of the mental shifts, because not only was it a physical transformation, but a mental one for her as well. Karen had been dieting since she was 16, like literally decades and decades and decades of restriction and failure. And so she came to me thinking her metabolism was broken. I've heard this a lot. People thinking that their metabolisms are broken. And it wasn't, because your metabolism isn't broken. You just haven't learned to work with your body. And Karen lost 13.5 pounds and 23 inches without going into that restriction cycle that she was so familiar with. But what I love most about Karen's story is that she had health ramifications. So for her, she had really bad arthritis, and she said her arthritis inflammation cleared up, pain-free, and that she has enough energy now to play with her grandkids. Melissa is one of our rock stars. So Melissa is another one. This transformation I shouldn't say took place because it started in 2019. We're always still on our own transformation journeys. They don't really ever end. But Melissa started in 2019, ended up losing 50 pounds, has kept it off to this day. And what I love about Melissa is that this has really become a lifestyle for her. She went from not exercising at all on the left to now she competes in powerlifting competitions on the right. And that shift is so powerful. It's not just what happens in your body, it's what you can do with your body and what you're able to accomplish. Barbara's fun because Barbara was a hell no to macro counting. She's like, I'm not weighing my food, I'm not cooking separately from my family. And once I told her what I've told you guys, that there's no one right way to do it, that you don't have to cook separately from your family, you don't have to weigh everything all the time. Once she figured that out of how to make it work for her body and her lifestyle, she was in. And she loved that she didn't have to cook separate meals from her family. She was able to make it work with her family's lifestyle and saw huge changes. Holly came to me eating about 1,300 calories and was not able to lose any weight. Again, she thought her metabolism was destroyed. It wasn't. We slowly moved her through a reverse up from about 1,300 calories to 2,500 calories. She was eating almost double the amount of calories and didn't gain any fat. We were able to fix her metabolism, improve her relationship with food, improve her relationship with her body. She feels stronger, she's sleeping better, and she's finally trusting her body. And then the last one is Sarah. Sarah's got 5 kids, and she's another one who swore up and down that she would never count macros. She's another hell no that became a hell yes. And she really came to me wanting to build muscle. And so by utilizing macro counting, was able to build muscle. She ended up losing about 12 inches, feels stronger than she ever has in years, and really proves that just because you're a busy mom doesn't mean that you can't prioritize yourself and your goals and what you're wanting to accomplish. So I show you those things, again, to one, prove what is possible with those tools, right? Lots of outcomes, all the way from clearing up inflammation with arthritis, to playing with grandkids, to eating more food, to being stronger, to losing fat, building muscle. Macro counting is a way that we work with your body. We have to work with your mind and with your body. But here is the warning. This is the difference changer. This is the difference maker. So many people turn macro counting into macro dieting. And I kind of alluded to this at the beginning, where you're given these numbers and now they just become a cage that you have to hit every single day. That's just a different diet with different rules, okay? When you use macro counting in that way, it becomes really restrictive. It feels like maybe you have some flexibility with how you hit them, but it still feels oppressive, like the numbers are controlling everything. And so you end up right back in that compliance and defiance trap that we talked about in training 1. Now that is not the tool's fault, right? Like a hammer is a tool and it can be used to build a house or tear down the house. It's the same hammer, but how you use it is very different. And so it's not the tool's fault, it's not macro counting's fault, It's the mindset that we bring to the tool. And when you use macro counting with the mindset that we're going to talk about, it becomes the opposite of the diet. So we've talked about the tool, which is macro counting. But we have to bring the right mindset along with it. And that is that of the scientist. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because when we can pair this really awesome tool that helps you get to know your body, that helps bring awareness and feedback and data into what you're doing, and you pair it with the scientist mindset, everything starts to change. You start to say, instead of, did I hit my numbers or did I not? Am I successful or am I not? You start to ask much better questions. How is this impacting me? What's working and what isn't? Do I need to shift something? Do I need to change something? Do I need to just keep going? So as the scientist, we're going to talk about contrasting the mindset that a lot of us are bringing to our health and fitness goals, and how do we start to shift into the scientist mindset. And then I have a homework assignment for you to be able to put this into practice. So the first thing that I see a lot with people who come and have me coach them is we have to shift them out of judgment. For a lot of you, a lot of your day is surrounded with judgment, right? You step on the scale and we judge it. I'm such a failure. I'm such a loser. Or I'm such an awesome person, right? It's still, whether it's negative or positive, it's still judgment. I ate that and I shouldn't have. I'm bad. I said no and I'm so good, right? It's judgment. So one of the things I'm helping my clients to do is to move from judgment to curiosity. Because a scientist is not judgmental about the experiment that they're running, right? It's like they're curious. They have a hypothesis. They want to test it out. They want to see if it works. And then if it does, great. If it doesn't, well, they're going to try something else. So how would that shift things if instead of judging yourself all day long, you were able to move into curiosity? Second thing, a lot of you are letting feelings drive your decision making. You had a bad day, you feel bloated, so you decide your nutrition plan isn't working. That is feelings driving your decisions. Whereas a scientist does not go off of feelings, a scientist goes off of data. They look at the full picture. They're gathering information, measurements, energy levels, sleep quality, strength in the gym, how your clothes fit. Like, they don't let one emotional day override weeks of objective data. So how would it shift things for you if you could move? We all innately know this. You know that when you're mad, you don't make the best decisions. We all know that. And that is because you're in your amygdala, which is the fear center of your brain. When emotions are driving our actions, we're in the fear center. And we don't make very good decisions. We don't make very good rational decisions. We make very instinctual ones. When we can move from the fear center of your brain, the amygdala, we can move to the frontal cortex. That's where rational decision making happens. That's where logic happens. We know that we make better decisions, but a lot of you are making decisions from your fear-based brain rather than from your frontal cortex, and it changes everything when you can move that. Moving on, it's very similar, but a little bit different. Emotion, I guess I kind of already talked about this. I kind of jumped ahead of my slide deck. But emotion, a lot of us are making decisions on emotion versus logic. Again, the scale is up. I might as well eat whatever I want today. That's the amygdala talking. Stepping back, asking ourselves better questions. That's interesting, curiosity. I wonder why the scale is up. What happened yesterday that I could attribute to this? Did I eat more salt over the day? Did I have a heavy leg day yesterday? Did I not sleep quite as well? Let's see what the data does over the next couple of days, and then I can make a judgment and assess and figure out what to do next. Do you see the difference? Right? That's like so different of an experience. And then the last one, that's such a huge shift. This can change everything for a lot of you who are so afraid of failure. When a scientist runs an experiment that doesn't work, do they call themselves a failure? No. What do they say? That's valuable data. It's like, I can't even remember who it is, but it's like, I think it was attributed to Thomas Edison, where he's like, I didn't make 1,000 versions of the light bulb. I learned 1,000 ways to not do it. Right? It becomes, instead of failure, it becomes feedback. Same with your body. You couldn't stick to your plan this week. That's not failure. That's feedback about what's sustainable for you. You've tried this before, had success, and then you're back again. That's not failure, that's feedback that often the mindset piece is what didn't take root for you. That's not failure, it's feedback. The scale went up, that's not failure, that's feedback. And we can bring that curiosity to figure out what's going on. So I always tell my clients, failure does not exist. You either get the result that you wanted, or you get the lesson that you needed. And the problem is a lot of us don't really like the lessons that we're getting, and so then we just stay stuck in the cycle of repeating them over and over and over again. When we can get out of the emotion of failure, and we can step back and say, that's feedback, that's interesting, what do I need to learn from this, and how can I apply that moving forward? Now you stop staying stuck. But so many of you are stuck because you refuse to learn the lesson that is being handed to you because you label it as a failure. And when you label it as a failure, you don't have to look any closer. You can just keep moving, but then you're going to stay stuck because that lesson is still there for you to learn. So I want to do one more little piece on why this is so hard for our brains. Because I mentioned when I shared all of those success stories that for some of you, it was going to bring things up into your brain about how, well, that's other people, but I don't know that I can be successful. And then you probably have a list of reasons why that is. I'm too old. I'm perimenopausal. I don't have enough time. I'm too busy. It's too confusing. I'm not smart enough. I travel way too much. My job's too stressful. I have too many kids. So your brain comes up with all of these reasons why to account for other people's success, but why you haven't been successful. And y'all, we have to address that if you want to be successful. So I want to have a little segment on the difference between reasons and excuses. What is the difference between a reason and an excuse? The biggest question that I will reflect back to people is this helping you find a solution, or is it helping you avoid committing? That's the difference. Reasons lead to problem solving. I travel a lot, so how do I make this work on the road? That's a reason that leads to problem solving and figuring it out, versus excuses lead us to giving up. So that sounds like I travel a lot, so this is impossible for me. And now we let ourselves off the hook and we don't have to feel bad about ourselves. That's an excuse. Now, just like when I talked about the perfectionist versus the chronic grace giver, there's something behind the excuse. This is what I'm really good at discovering with my clients. Is like, there's the stuff on the surface level, and then there's the stuff underneath. And when we get underneath, we can really create change. So what is underneath some of those excuses that are so easy to bring up? As I go through these, I want you to start to notice where you might be getting stuck. What are some of the reasons behind your excuses? It may show up as, I'm too old, but there's something behind that. There's a fear behind that. The first one that I see and coach through a lot is fear of failure. We already talked about this. This is a huge one. I would say, I don't want to put numbers on it, but something like 50% of the women that I coach have some sort of fear of failure. And so that shows up as, if I don't really try, I can't really fail. And they stay stuck, wanting results, wanting change, but you cannot get change and be afraid of failure at the same time. It won't work. You'll stay stuck. The opposite of the coin is fear of success. Well, that's weird. Why would I fear success, Amber? Well, if you succeed, people will expect more from you. It may change your relationships. It may make people notice you more. And that is scary. So a lot of us are actually not, and some of us are fear of both. We have a fear of failure and a fear of success. But like, we're so afraid of being successful that we actually actively hold ourselves back. Yeah, change is scary, Sandy. And until staying stuck is more scary than the change, you won't change. a lot of you view change as more scary than staying where you are. And so you complain about where you are, you don't like where you are, but at the same time, it's comfortable because it's known, it's familiar. So that has to be scarier. Staying stuck, staying put, not changing has to be scarier than stepping out into the unknown. Otherwise, you'll stay stuck the whole time. Another fear that I coach through a lot is unworthiness. Good things don't happen to people like me. And if we struggle with that unworthiness, putting everybody else in front of ourselves, nothing will change until we shift this. Identity protection. I'm not the type of person who does this stuff. I'm not the type of person who gets up and goes to the gym. I'm not the type of person who eats broccoli. I'm not the type of person who counts macros. I'm not that, whatever it is. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, really talks a lot about identity and how all the actions we take are aligning with the identity that we choose, that we have of ourselves. Who we think we are, our actions very quickly align with that. It's not hard for me not to smoke because I'm not a smoker. If I was a smoker and I had that identity, the actions that would follow would be smoking, okay? So whatever identity you're holding on to, we're going to act in accordance with that identity. And so if you're trying to protect an identity that isn't in alignment with the results that you want, you will struggle over and over to get there. And then last one is perfectionism. If I can't do it perfect, why bother? We are back to that stinking perfectionism. Again, showing up, that fear. If we don't address these fears, these beliefs, I don't care how perfect your macros are. I don't care how perfect your food is. I don't care how perfect your exercise routine is. If you don't address these fears, you will stay stuck with all the reasons why you can't succeed and none of the results. Something all of those women had in common, the photos, the stories that I told, something they had in common was that they started to believe they could succeed first, before they had the success to back it up. So many people think, I'll believe I can be successful once I am. That's backwards. You have to believe it first before you can create it. It is possible for you to change. It is scary, but staying stuck is scary as well. And it all comes down to what are you willing to do, what are you willing to create, and what is it worth to you? Are you willing to let go of the story that is keeping you psychologically safe, but at the same time, preventing you from getting the results that you say that you want? That's a lot of the work. Letting go of the stories, the excuses, all the reasons why you can't be successful, and deciding to choose to believe in your ability. It's cliche to say, but it's cliche for a reason. You can have excuses or results. You cannot have both. At some point, you have to decide that success is more important than psychological safety. So, we're going to practice a little bit of this. We're going to practice this scientist mindset. Your homework between now and Training 3 on Friday is to practice the scientist mindset with your body. So I want you to pick one thing, and I'm very serious about the one thing. Please don't pick 10 things. Please don't pick 3 things. Pick one thing to observe and track. Not to change. This is important. Listen up. You're not changing this thing. You're just bringing awareness to it and collecting data. So what is it? What are you going to pay attention to? You can literally pick anything. I don't care what you pick. You can pick whatever you want. But sometimes I know that it helps to have like a list of things to spark ideas. So ideas of things you could pay attention to. You could pay attention to how much protein you're eating. You could pay attention to how much fiber you consume. You could pay attention to how many steps you're taking each day. You could pay attention to your hunger and your fullness before or after meals. You could pay attention to how many vegetables you consume. You could pay attention to how much water you drink a day, how much energy you have. I don't really care. You're just picking something, hopefully something that's a little bit important to you, and just paying attention to it. Now, remember, we're not trying to change anything. Don't change anything. I know that's going to be hard, but I'm serious about this. You're just observing. You're just bringing awareness to it. And then, what I want you to start to notice, this is where I want you paying attention. Notice where your mind goes as you start observing this. As you start bringing more awareness to the number of steps you take a day, notice if your mind goes into judgment. That's not enough. Okay? That's that dieter mentality. And your goal is to, when you notice going into that judgmental place, to counteract it and move to curiosity, that scientist mindset. Instead of, that's not enough, it is, that's just a number. It's neutral. Right? If I said, is 30 a big number or a little number? Well, we have no context. Like 30 is a lot of cockroaches. It is not a lot of, for a house, right? $30 is not a lot for a house, right? So like the number itself has no inherent high or low, big or little, too much, not enough. The number itself is just a data point. We bring the judgment into it, okay? So your goal is to move from judgment into neutrality. It's not bad or good that you ate 40 grams of protein yesterday. It just is, okay? Now, what I would love to hear is your experience of this. Oh, let's keep going. There we go. I want you to reflect on what did you choose to observe and why? What surprised you most about the experience? And then what did it feel like to move from judgment, the dieter mentality, into curiosity, the scientist mentality? So quick little recap, things that we talked about today. We talked about, actually, you know what? I took that out of my slide deck because it was getting too long. We talked about macro counting, how it is for awareness, data, and feedback, not for hitting perfect numbers. Yes, it is about tracking fats, carbs, and protein to understand your unique body, to be able to work with your unique body. We also talked about how the scale can't measure fat loss. You need comprehensive data about the inputs and the outputs. Remember that black box and the machine to be able to work with your body like a scientist. We talked about asking, what am I willing to do instead of what should I do? That sustainable challenge zone, remember? How we really want to not swing into perfectionism or chronic grace giving, but find that sustainable challenge zone. We talked about adopting the scientist mindset and approaching your body with curiosity versus judgment, data versus emotion, feedback versus just failure. And then we talked about your personality type, right? Perfectionists need to practice good enough. Chronic grace givers need to stay in that uncomfortable commitment. And then both of you guys need to address underlying fears that create excuses. Now, we do have a couple of really exciting things coming up. On Thursday, I am doing a bonus coaching call because I know that learning is awesome. Love learning. And learning doesn't create change until it's implemented. So I mentioned this before, but a lot of you guys stay stuck in the learning phase thinking, oh, I'm doing so much, I'm learning so much. That's all well and good. But if you don't actually do anything with it, nothing actually changes, then nothing changes if nothing changes. So I'm gonna have a bonus coaching call on Thursday. It'll be at the same time. And we'll send out all the details about it. We'll send out a link if you would like to be coached live on the call. You can put in for an opportunity to do that. But I recommend that even if you don't get coached live, come and you can start to see how we take concepts and principles and start to put them into application, because that piece is so, so important. And then our final training will be on Friday, September 5th, same time, same channel. And in that training, we're gonna really start to talk about, okay, great. We know what doesn't work. We talked about that in training 1, right? Trying and diets, they don't work. They don't work with your brain, they don't work with your body. Today's focus, we talked about the right tool, macro counting, and the right mindset, the scientist, and some of that mental growth that needs to be happening. How do we get out of that self-sabotaging behavior? How we move past some of these fears so that we can break out and be successful. Our last training on Friday, we'll be putting together an action plan. This is where I'm gonna start to show you some of the steps. How do we integrate the things that we've been talking about into action steps? Into, okay, what do I do now? How do I think about my starting macros? How do I make adjustments based off of data? How do I gather feedback from my body? How do I address these mental blocks? Now that I know I have a fear of failure, how do I get past it? Right? All of those how-to pieces. And I'm really gonna start to build that bridge that's gonna take you from where you are now to where you wanna be. So that training is where it's gonna start to really click together and really give you a clear path forward with everything that you've learned to this point. So I will see you Thursday for our coaching call, and Friday for the last and final training, training number 3 of the Diet Rebellion. Take care.